Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am here today with my guest, Ruth Jamieson, coming to us from Portugal. And I was just saying, I love having these international conversations. It is such a beautiful platform to connect people from all over the world. And I'm so grateful that Ruth has joined me in what is her evening, which is my morning, which is lovely to have you share some of your evening with me. So Ruth, welcome. Please introduce yourself and share with our listeners, what has been your journey? How did you get to where you are right now?
Okay.
I know it's a big loaded question.
It is. I'm like, wow. So I am a nutrition and functional medicine practitioner, and I help women who are sort of, our age, sort of early 40s, but actually even before that, because the perimenopause, menopause transition can actually start happening as early as 35. But I help women sort of go through this very natural transition, because that's what it is. It's a natural transition, smoothly. And I try to sort of help them make the diet and lifestyle changes that they need in order to sort of have a much smoother experience with it, with, not so many symptoms, but also looking at their long-term health, because there's all these stories of, post-menopause, you've got this increased risk of osteoporosis and dementia and heart disease and all of that. And it doesn't have to be that way. Mm-hmm. I think there's been a lot of misinformation. That I think a big thing for me is that it's currently presented to us as a health condition or a deficiency of something that needs medication or medicated with hormones, but it's not. It's a very natural transition, and in fact, many of the problems that a lot of women experience are not due to a decline, this natural decline in hormones, but rather it's a mismatch. It's the food we're eating, the lifestyles we're living, the environments we're in. Because if you look at other cultures, because it's mainly like Western cultures where menopause and all these things are a big problem. If you look at other cultures, some of them don't even have a word for it. They don't even know about it. The only reason they know that they are post-menopause is their menstruation stops, So it is very much a Western problem, and it is, it's made worse. All the symptoms and all the problems are due to, not living healthily and according to our genes. So
it's so interesting too. I mean, I'm going to interject just really quick, even as you just say that, I often, in terms of how I teach mindfulness, one of the mindsets is it's not the thing, it's how you relate to the thing. Right. Yeah. And so if we have been conditioned to relate to menopause with fear, anxiety, worry, loss, anxiety, did I say anxiety already? With in relation to what am I entering into, which now might equal old age, right? As I'm saying with air quotes, or even having to grieve over the loss of, for what many women is what I'm here to do, which is reproduce. And who am I as a woman if I no longer have these capabilities? So I think there's so many layers to it. And I know, I've had a couple of different guests on the show, and I'm so happy to be talking in different areas, because I think in my mind, there are different doors into the same room, right? What are the different ways that we can achieve optimal health, right? And I approach it from that mental and emotional, spiritual approach and therapy. And that's just one door into the room of our overall health and well-being. And there's no wrong answer per se, right? I think what you're naming right off the bat, if I can kind of pull out what I'm hearing so far, is we got to look at the big picture. And diet and lifestyle is integral, which we also know in Western culture isn't as healthy. So interesting that we're having more issues, but it's also the least healthy as far as diet and lifestyle. So maybe there is some correlation there too. So
yeah. And it's also very interesting what you said. You just reminded me of a very important thing, is that in our Western culture, it is down to how we view women's health, like, you know, menstrual cycles and our problems with it, and women's health problems and birth and breastfeeding and all of that. We're fed this narrative, and there is research and people kind of questioning how much does that narrative kind of affect our experience of it. You know, are we having a harder time going through the menopause, not just because of diet and lifestyle and all of that, but because of how we've been programmed, the narrative that's been passed down to us. If we were told from a young age that it was just normal and it was okay, and actually once you're postmenopausal, wow, look at all these other things that you've got to look forward to, and looking at it in a different way, would we experience it differently? I mean, I read this book, and I would recommend that anybody approaching this phase of life read. It's called is it the slow moon climbs, or the slow moon, I can't remember now, the slow moon climbs or the slow moon rises or something like that. I'll have to let you know. Yeah, but it's a really beautiful book that looks at the history of menopause, looks at different cultures, looks at why did humans evolve to go through menopause in the middle of our lives when most other mammals continue to procreate until they're really old. Like, what was the reason for it? And
what is the environment, the evolutionary adaptation of
exactly that? And this woman reckoned that it was, we were so useful as grandmothers to look after our children's children and be a really important part of the tribe, that it was better for us to stop reproducing so that we could take on that role. And that's why this happened. So no,
I was thinking, I was just thinking moms need a break.
There is that too. But you know what I mean? It's like you get on one side of the story, you get people kind of going, oh, it's not natural, it's, you know, we're living longer than we used to, and that's why it's happening. It's like, well, no, that's not quite the case, because if you go back past Victorian era, older and older, we did live longer. And I think it's more that we became very useful to look after. I mean, they looked at some kind of,
I love that perspective. It's beautiful. It feels very holistic and kind of cycle of life sort of. Here's how I can now give back, since I'm not having to deal with procreation at 60 or 70 years old.
Exactly. Apparently grandmothers back in the day, like, they were kind of getting more food than the parents were. They were so important. And I think it's beautiful as well when you think now, when people get old, they're almost like, oh, you're not of any use anymore, which is very, very sad, because they've got,
which can lead to elderly depression and absolutely, loneliness.
Exactly. So it's a really good book to read. It really sort of looks at different societies, different cultures, and the history of menopause, and how it's actually quite a new phenomenon, all the problems and everything like that.
Interesting.
So really good book to read.
I want to name one thing, and then we're going to go back, because I want to hear more of your story. But you were talking about the narrative, right? And how that affects our experience. And, this is a big piece of the work that I do with my clients is, really understanding just how powerful our mindset is. And, there's been so many studies around the impact of mindset. But even just this morning, I read an article, and I want to say it was out of like one of the universities in Ohio, perhaps, but they were talking, Ohio State University. They were talking about doing a study in which how the language that described the product impacted people's desire around, it was cookies. And, they had one cookie labeled consumer complaint, one cookie labeled factory typical, and one cookie labeled new and improved. And the reporting back on the flavor and taste and experience of enjoying the cookie was very much in alignment with the description. And in fact, they were the exact same cookie, right? So it lends to the belief of just how strong our negativity bias is, and just how strong on the flip side our confirmation bias is, right? That we look for evidence to support the narrative that we believe. And so if we're not checking our narrative, at least from time to time, then we are potentially setting ourselves up for a much more difficult experience with many things than actually would have to be the case. So tell me a bit more how tell me a bit more about your story. How did you get to this point in both your career, and what has been your personal journey that has overlapped with this?
Well, I wasn't always specializing in women's health and hormones. When I started out, I got into this field after the birth of my son. I was just really passionate about trying to have a very healthy child and do the best for my family. I knew a lot of people that were naturopaths, and I was already quite interested in all of that. And I was just doing research into the area, and I found that there was a lot of conflicting advice out there. And in the end, I was just like, okay, well, the only way to handle this is to actually study this and become a nutritional therapist and functional medicine practitioner, and empower myself with the knowledge. So that's what I did. So before that, I used to work in hospitality and catering. So I was always had a love of food and was always kind of interested in nutrition, had a lot of books on nutrition on my bookshelf, but it was always like, one day. But so then I studied, and I just ignited a passion in me, and it was the best thing I've ever done, and I never looked back. And at the time I didn't have any health issues, but I did eventually develop type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease, and the knowledge that I have has really helped me manage my condition much better. I would just not be as healthy as I am now. I've got so many tools and everything like that, and just things that I am doing in terms of my son's health to help him prevent getting the disease, because autoimmunity can it's run in my family. My father had it and all that kind of thing. So and then as I was working with more people, I found I was working with a lot of women in this age bracket. And then about a year ago, I was noticing that I was getting strange heart flutters or something like that. And I didn't have any other perimenopausal symptoms. I still don't, but I was getting these heart flutters, and I went to see a doctor, and the doctor was like, well, maybe you need to go and see a cardiologist. So I went to see a cardiologist, and it cost me a fortune, like really a lot of money, like 500 euros or something like that, to do all these tests. They did like an ultrasound, and I had to run on a treadmill while they did things, and all kinds of, I had to wear some thing on me for 24 hours just to check my heartbeat. And then I went back in the end, and the doctor was like, your heart's perfectly fine. I don't really know why. Maybe because of your height, your heart's in a slightly different angle to other people, but maybe that's what it is. And I was just laughing inside, because I was just like, so my height and the angle of my heart after 44 years is now making my heart kind of like, what it was doing was it would pause, and then when it would beat again, like the force would be really strong. So I'd feel this like, it was kind of scary. I was like, what's going on? So he was like, well, there's nothing wrong, like just keep an eye on it. And he even told me that he didn't really believe I had type 1 diabetes because my blood sugar was so well controlled.
Interesting.
So I then I wasn't satisfied with that answer. I was like, well, something's not right. Why is my heart doing this? And I was doing a little bit more research, and then I discovered that it is a symptom that some women get in perimenopause. Is not very well studied or understood. And so when I started doing more research into the area of perimenopause, and then I just started to see how a lot of women weren't getting the right information or the right support. But what bugged me was that narrative, was just that really negative narrative, and this whole like, oh, perimenopause, menopause, I need HRT. And I'm not like totally against HRT. Like there is for some people it's needed, and it can be used in other ways, but it's not like everybody has to go on it. It's not, we don't have a disease, we don't have a deficiency. Men and children don't make loads of estrogen and progesterone, and it doesn't affect their health, you know what I mean? So it was kind of that really got me, just seeing so many women just kind of going up, get put on HRT. They go to the doctor and go, oh, I'm getting hot flushes, I'm feeling this, okay, HRT. And this negative narrative around it, where it's like, oh, it's the end of my prime, everything's downhill from here, all that kind of thing. And so I really wanted to try and promote the fact that it can be something positive, and that if you don't want to go down the hormone replacement, and it's actually not the right term to use, actually, because if you say hormone replacement, you're inferring that you need replacing of hormones because there's a pathology and you need to whatever. It's actually hormone, what do they call it now? Just hormone therapy. So yeah, I wanted to promote more the idea that, if you address hormonal imbalances like the decade before you would start going through perimenopause, and you address underlying health issues and you really start looking after yourself, there's a very good chance you will go through the transition with very little symptoms, and you'll be able to prevent all of these kind of diseases that they say that you're more at risk of, because they're making it seem as if you get heart disease, osteoporosis, and all of that because of menopause. But it's more that that higher amount of hormones we make in our reproductive years gives us an added layer of protection against these diseases, which allows us to maybe be more unhealthy. It's not that it's the decline of these hormones that causes.
So there's the connection, there's not a directionality, right? Exactly. So they're related, but it's not an A plus B equals C.
Exactly.
So help me understand, because even though I'm 44 as well, I also don't feel like I know very much about perimenopause. And what do people need to know that maybe they don't know? And then I'd like to find out more about, well, what are some of those ways that we can address the lifestyle through nutrition and, other avenues that can help make that transition into menopause smoother, right? So how can we be more preventative or more proactive versus perhaps reactive? So first, what exactly is perimenopause? Because you described your experience as those heart flutters, but that's an atypical, maybe not as common, that horrible phrase in medicine of where it's not common but not uncommon. You're like, great, what does that mean for me? I used to hate that, like when my kids were babies or I was pregnant. It's not common but not uncommon. Great, I don't even know what that means. It means it means the doctor doesn't know, right?
So exactly.
What exactly? And I also have this question too. What about for women who are in their 40s who are still on hormone birth control, where their hormones are being regulated? How would their bodies recognize any signs of perimenopause if, and I don't know if you know the answer to that, but it's a question that I've had, if their hormones are being regulated through birth control that maybe they're on for a variety of different reasons still at this point, even though they're not, their partners may have had a vasectomy, but maybe they have had an easier time being on birth control just for their own symptoms, right? So I guess that's kind of two questions: is what are descriptions of perimenopause that women might experience, and if you can answer the part around what if they're already if they're still on the pill or having a hormone IUD.
So perimenopause is the time before the menopause. So the menopause is actually just one day when you have gone for 12 consecutive months without a menstrual period. You are then, that's the menopause, and then you're post-menopause. So perimenopause is
menopause is just one day.
So perimenopause is that time leading up to the menopause, which for some women can be 2 years, for some women can be 10 years. It can start as early as 35. And very often women probably won't be experiencing any symptoms, but that's kind of internally when some of the changes start to happen. So what usually starts to happen is progesterone. So a lot of people don't realize that you've got progesterone and estrogen, and they kind of work together with each other in this ideal ratio. And when they're doing that, you have easy cycles. You know, you don't have pain, you don't have heavy periods, you don't have breakouts, you don't have mood swings. You know, we're actually supposed to not have such a hard time with our menstrual cycles. And if you do, that's a sign that you've got an imbalance, and it's a sign that you're more likely to have troubles going through perimenopause. So
is that also related that age 35 to why it's recommended for women to try to get pregnant before that age? Is that where that number comes from, that if perimenopause starts around 35, that's kind of that root marker of your reproductive health may start to decrease slightly as those hormones are not in the ideal balance?
It's probably part of that, but also just that, you know, we're born with all of our eggs, and so our eggs are kind of getting older. And I think the idea is also that, like, the older the eggs are, the more chance there is of something going wrong. But yes, certainly it becomes more and more difficult to get pregnant the older we are. So yeah, so progesterone starts to slowly decline, and estrogen in that perimenopause transition actually fluctuates. It goes high and low, and it's that fluctuation that causes a lot of the symptoms. So it's kind of bouncing up and down, and you can kind of, you know, some women might get migraines, more migraines, and that's from like a withdrawal of the estrogen from it kind of going high and going low. You know, there's the night sweats, or sort of the hot flushes during the day, the changes in libido, vaginal dryness, all kinds of things, like more your cycles might get shorter and more erratic. Your periods might be more heavy and more painful. You might start to get breakouts again, like if you kind of got them when you were younger. Weight gain, a lot of women find they start to put on weight, and that's again due to estrogen keeps us more insulin sensitive, and so we can kind of become more insulin resistant. And so, I mean, if you're already slightly insulin resistant from poor diet and lifestyle and all of that going into perimenopause, then that's why some women might put on a lot of weight then and really struggle then to lose that weight. The risk of dementia is really high if you don't. If you go into perimenopause and you've got insulin resistance and then you don't address that, it's kind of a critical time for whether you are at a higher risk of dementia. What else? I mean,
all of those symptoms you just named were due to fluctuations in our estrogen, because
and the decline
and the decrease of progesterone.
Yeah, because usually, I mean, I guess some women will get like a lot of just worsening of their PMS or their kind of
more moodiness.
Yeah, it will all get worse because all of a sudden, like I say, those two hormones that are usually balancing out each other's kind of effects on our cycle, then are just not being balanced. And the problem is a lot as well that progesterone is already quite low for a lot of women before they go into perimenopause, because stress, chronic stress, causes a depletion of progesterone, because the same raw materials that make our stress hormone are used for progesterone, and our body will kind of preferentially make cortisol because it's like a survival hormone at the expense of that. So, I mean, that's the same reason why some women might have problems with their cycle or problems with miscarriage or not being able to conceive, can be for that same reason. So I would say there's very few people at all you would come across that actually don't have issues with stress in some ways. We are just living in a very stressful environment, you know.
Which is where I come in. right? Which is where I come in. And that's the whole goal of the work that I do is, how to manage your stress, anxiety, overwhelm through tools such as mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah, you can't avoid all of these stresses. It's life. And it's like what you said earlier, it's learning the tools and ways to kind of reframe and deal with it, because you can't escape it. But also stress is also not just psychological, it's physiological. So nutrient deficiencies is a stress on your body, and your body sees stress in the same way, no matter whether it's an infection, a poor diet, stressful work. It all has the same impact on the body.
So Lucy, can you answer the question about for women who are on the pill or any hormone thing? And then I want to go into what can people do? Like, what are the best natural ways through diet and lifestyle? Because I think those are things that women conceptually know, or what they know they should do. So we'll get there in a second, but what can you say to the other piece?
Yeah, so I think if a woman can come off the pill, if she doesn't need it, of course, as soon as possible, because the more natural menstrual cycles a woman has in her lifetime, the better it is for her long-term health, for her bone health and everything like that. A lot of these pills, they are synthetic hormones, so they already run the risk of, increasing your risk of cancer and all that kind of thing. The progesterone that is in a lot of contraception is not progesterone, it's progestogen. So the woman will feel something, but I guess I don't know enough about. Yeah, you need to kind of think about that.
An interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, it would make sense that actually maybe they would feel worse because they are adding in synthetic hormones to that mixture of hormones that are all over the place. So maybe they might end up kind of struggling more, or maybe not. I mean,
it's not a natural process.
So many and there's so many different
factors.
Pills, many different pills combinations. And then it also all depends on their own underlying health and hormone balance as well, because we're all so completely different. So,
which we can't even know what our underlying hormone balance is if we've been on the pill, because there's no baseline for that. So going into the nutrition and lifestyle piece, and this is a really interesting hot topic for me at the moment, because so as we're recording this, it's the end of January. I don't know, we'll release this in a couple of months, but I got COVID. My daughters and I got COVID. I tested positive Christmas Eve, and my symptoms started a couple of days beforehand. So it's been over a month, and we had, I'm vaccinated and boosted, and Omicron's contagious, and I don't even know where we got it from. And after we went through the cycle of the symptoms, which kept varying and changing, and they weren't terrible, but they just kind of kept persisting and kept going on. After the kind of cold and flu symptoms went away, after a couple of weeks, I started experiencing brain fog, which I've never had in my life. I'm usually really quick with my thoughts. I can tie things together quickly and think about a million things and put it all into a cohesive, kind of thoughts and process. And it was fascinating to observe this challenge in accessing words and kind of tracing thoughts. And then I was getting really bad headaches, which I don't normally get. And then one day I woke up with massive nerve pain there. I couldn't even barely move my leg to get out of bed. And then when I got out of bed, I could barely even stand on my leg without tears in my eyes. I couldn't lift my foot 2 inches off the ground to put on my leggings. I had to sit down to get dressed. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening to me.
Yeah.
But the kind of mantra I've been having is, I don't know that it's COVID related, but I don't know that it's not. Yeah. And I was doing a little bit more research, and I happened to find an article in which studies are coming out of India and South Africa that long COVID symptoms associated with Omicron are different than long COVID symptoms with originating COVID strains. One of which is back pain, nerve pain, myalgia related inflammation related issues. Even prior to reading that article, I had already decided the morning I woke up with the nerve pain, because I didn't find the article till 4 days later, I'm going to do an anti-inflammatory diet. And I figured the brain fog, the nerve pain, all to me seemed like a result of possible inflammation. And I eat pretty well normally, but I was going to let me just see what I can do, because it's something I can control. And for 10 days, I was really strict with an anti-inflammatory diet. And I have since then adopted more of the 80-20 rule to really be lifestyle maintenance. And I would say, I mean, I haven't had nerve pain since. The brain fog has been better. I'm still getting some headaches, but it was really powerful in real time to say, let me shift consciously and really make an awareness of everything I'm putting in my mouth is either going to do something good for my brain or it's not going to do something good for my brain. And for the first time, it was about my brain, not my body, as far as like what size are my jeans and how I'm going to on vacation in a couple of months, right? So for me, who's someone that has struggled with my weight for many years, having this internal mental shift of this is for my brain health was much easier for me to stick to the diet, quote unquote, right? To the lifestyle shift, because my brain health was much more important than the size of my jeans. And I, for the first time, really consciously started taking vitamins specifically. Like, you know, I'm always taking, you know, calcium and vitamin C, but a really conscious regimen for, again, I want to do everything within my power, because this largely feels out of my control, and what parts are within my control. So that's kind of my little, like, I'm really fascinated about the nutrition piece in a way that I never was quite before. Because I felt something that, again, was really frightening to feel. I have no control over what this long-term virus does, or I don't know what this long-term virus does, and yet what can I control?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And for me, just with the whole COVID thing, I know we're going just a bit off topic, but it's been frustrating to see that there's been no diet and lifestyle advice to get people to get their bodies healthier so that when they do get COVID, they can fight it off better. You know, it's all very much kind of, you know, all about get the vaccine and do all of this social distancing and masking and whatever, and nothing looking into, like, you know, with functional medicine and nutrition and all of that. It's like the health of the terrain is so important, and this wasn't kind of addressed. And it's quite, you know, we've all just had COVID as well. I mean, I technically think I'm probably still positive because I only tested positive the other day, and myself, my partner, and my son, and we all had very different experiences of it. My son had a fever and a headache for a day and a half, and then the only thing for a week, he just didn't eat as much as normal, but that was that. My partner, he kind of just had very typical flu-like symptoms, like fever, headache, just achiness for like a week. And I was fine, and I just kept thinking, wow, like I've escaped this, and I didn't kind of protect myself anymore. Like, you know, I wasn't about to kind of isolate my son. I was, you know,
right.
He was sick, you know. I was like, whatever. But the minute he got sick, I started treating myself as if I was sick. I upped all my vitamin D, my C, like I have a whole lot of stuff that I was taking. So maybe that kind of helped. But by the time I did get it, my symptoms were so not COVID that I thought it was some kind of cold. I didn't have a fever. I had a runny nose, and my eyes hurt if I looked too far one way or the other. And occasionally I felt a bit tired, but that's as far as my symptoms kind of went. And I wouldn't have thought I got tested on the Friday only so I could go out for dinner with my family, and that was negative. And then I started feeling a bit off the next day, and then waited a few days and tested again at home and got positive. So it was all completely different. But, you know, it is very powerful what diet and lifestyle and just the health of your body, because we are actually coming into contact with viruses and bacteria every single second, you know, and whether our body fights it well or not, and how and the long COVID and how we recover and all of that depends on just the health of our body, putting the right nutrients in to repair and do all of that.
And I think people feel like, oh, I have to do that. Like, I'm going to have to give up all of these things in order to do that. And I think that's a mindset, right? It feels like, but I don't want to give up my coffee creamer. I don't want to give up my cookies. I mean, my daughter is 15, she's almost 16, and she has gotten, since COVID began and we just were in quarantine, she became really curious about health and nutrition and fitness. And she has great ability to like take in the nutrition content and cycle it through into action. Some people's brains can't kind of synthesize the material, but she takes in the nutritional information and then is able to really understand how the body is working as far as that. It's amazing. She's got a gift for that. But she's also been making these recipes that you would never imagine were, quote, healthy. And it's phenomenal that when you really look at, you know, putting whole foods into your body versus so much processed foods. I mean, she made cookies last night, and I want to get back to some of more nutrition stuff, but I think this is important for people to hear too. Like she made cookies last night that were phenomenal. That, you know, she ground up oat flour, and there was, I think, 1 egg and 1 tablespoon of maple syrup, coconut sugar, homemade peanut butter, you know, like all these whole things, even the coconut sugar versus, you know, regular white processed sugar, which she can tell you is the calorie difference and the benefits of the coconut sugar. Like she knows all of it. And it's so fascinating, and I think a relief to eat this cookie without guilt. Of not only, oh, this is too many calories, but no, actually everything in here is a whole food and is doing actually something good for my body. So I no longer have to categorize good foods and bad foods. Which I think is a very helpful mindset to shift into, because even just going back to mindset studies, you know, I've read studies that if you believe it's bad for you, it'll have a more negative effect on you calorically, right? So the mindset is such a huge fundamental piece of this. But so what are some nutrition aspects that people can really build the health of their terrain, which I love that visual.
So I mean, one of the things that I always start out with is just looking at a person's protein intake, because I find a lot of people don't eat enough protein, but we need more as we get older, because we need to build muscle more, because the muscle is going to help with bone health. So I look at people's protein intake.
Is there a good formula for knowing the right amount of protein for you?
There is roughly. I mean, it varies, but I usually say around 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, more or less.
So how would that translate to US metrics? Because I don't know. So
we'd have to look it up, but I think I'm wondering if it's like a pound per pound. I wonder if it would work out.
You know what? I think on a pound per pound might be about right, because I know when I was working with a fitness coach and she was having me look at nutrition, my target goal was 120 grams of protein a day.
Okay.
And I weigh about 125, 130. So and that felt really high to me. As far as a target, like that was hard to match to get to.
Okay.
That felt a little bit more than what I was used to. So I think it was a great baseline for recognizing I'm not sure I was getting to 50 grams of protein a day.
That's very common, you know, and trying to sort of spread that protein out throughout the day. And if people need a visual, I usually kind of say to get 20 grams of protein, like a piece of chicken or fish or meat the size of your hand has roughly 20 to 25 grams of protein. So it can be quite easy to get. Like if you were having like fish, chicken or meat like for dinner with your vegetables, and then for lunch you had something similar like that as well, and your breakfast was 3 eggs, you'd quite easily make your target if you weighed around 50 to 60 kilograms.
Right.
If you work out a lot, you up your protein a bit more, but that's kind of like a good kind of baseline average.
What about adding in like whey protein or pea protein? Is there too much of that? Because, you know, people who make smoothies, let's say for breakfast, you know, is there too much of a good thing, not good? Like, you know, would you want to limit kind of some of those manufactured proteins versus the natural proteins?
I tend to only recommend those to clients where we've tried every which way and their life is just so busy, and I'm just trying to get them to get some good quality protein in their breakfast in the morning because they can't find any other way because they're really busy or they're not hungry. I do prefer to try and get it through whole
natural
food if possible, but it kind of really, you know, it depends on the person. If for some reason they're struggling to eat or they don't have time, I'm just okay, do that, but as much as possible find time to, because as well there's that thing of, you know, drinking a meal as opposed to chewing your food sets off all of the processes for your digestion to work properly and absorb all the nutrients and everything like that. So I tend to kind of go, you know, these things are good to have on hand. We're not living in a natural world, and if it's the only way you're going to get your protein in that morning, then fine. But, you know, if you can find time to, because, you know, how hard is it to boil some eggs or something like that? Or, you know, so
Okay. So protein, definitely a goal. What else?
I tend to think that lowering carbohydrates a bit, but I'm not talking like keto or mega low carb or whatever, but in general, we eat a lot of carbohydrates. If you look at most people's plate, you know, if they're kind of having rice or potato or whatever, that dominates the plate. So it's kind of reducing those high glycemic starches and things like that, and replacing them more with colorful vegetables and everything like that. So you're getting more of your carbohydrates from vegetables. Healthy fats. So again, I think things are changing now, but, you know, we were so fat phobic and women were kind of avoiding fat in their diets and everything like that, or eating sort of margarine and all of these other unhealthy fats.
I remember when I was a kid,
important to eat fat.
Do you remember the brand? I don't know if they had it as big as they did in the US, but the Snackwell's brand.
No, I don't.
Snackwell's. Oh my gosh. When I was, I would say in high school and college, so, you know, 20 plus years ago, Snackwell's was this huge, the boxes were green. I can still picture them. It was a fat-free brand. Okay. And it, you know, it felt like, oh, I can eat these cookies and these Snackwell's crackers because they're fat-free. And so the perception was that they were healthy.
Yeah. And it's the same now when you buy anything that's fat-free, in order for it to be nice and palatable, they add sugar, you know, so fat-free actually is the worst thing you can have because you're just adding more sugar. But it's just more general things, just trying to be more aware of the food you're buying when you're shopping and reading the labels. And, you know, if something says, hey, I'm healthy, don't trust it. Real healthy food doesn't need a label, doesn't come in a fancy package, just trying to eat whole foods. Things like snacking, you know, we've also been led to believe that we need to eat 3 meals plus snacks. And that's very much the food industry wanting to make money out of us. You know, we don't actually need to snack and eat as much as what we do. So eating 2 or 3 really healthy, well-balanced meals, and also shortening your eating window. So a lot of people are like waking up at 6 and having breakfast or whatever, and they continue to eat till 10, 11 o'clock at night and snack before they go to bed. And so they're not fasting overnight for very long. It's actually better to do more of that time fasting and have like a 8 to 10 max, like 12-hour feeding window, because that could be really helpful just for longevity, for fat burning. When we're in that fasted kind of period, our body actually kind of cleans up things that shouldn't be in the body, you know. It's like I think they've done some studies that they show that people who fast for at least 13 hours overnight are less likely to get cancer, because our body produces cancer cells all the time. It's a normal process. When it sort of gets to the point where we have these growths is when the immune system is not recognizing the cancer cells and getting rid of them, you know?
So that would really support an intermittent fasting mentality.
Yeah. And I'm, you know, it's quite, when you think about before we had shops and food in our cupboards 24/7, we would do a lot of fasting naturally. We'd be fasting while we go out to catch our meal for that night. So this intermittent fasting thing isn't kind of like some fad. It is actually mimicking how we used to be.
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
quite healthy for us, you know. But other things just that people don't think about in terms of being healthy is just looking at sleep. So many people aren't getting enough sleep. It's so crucial to get like 8-9 hours sleep at night, and proper sleep. So people might go, oh, I get 8 or 9 hours, but they're not getting really good quality deep sleep because they're not following the sleep hygiene of, like, you know, not staring at their phone before bed, or eating late at night, or coffee, or too much alcohol, which interferes with sleep. So a lot of chronic diseases today are also driven by poor sleep. So, you know, it's the whole thing. It's like, it's diet, it's exercise, and the right exercise. That's actually another point. Like, again, we've been mistakenly led to believe that we need to do cardio, loads and loads of cardio, and it's cardio that keeps us trim and all of that. But actually, we need to kind of do weight bearing and resistance exercises. And I think women tend to worry that it's going to make them like really muscly,
bulk up,
but we don't have enough testosterone. We're not men, so that's not going to happen. So, but it's really important for us to have muscle, not only for our bone health, but muscle is more metabolically active. So our sort of metabolism will be sort of better, and we'll sort of keep a healthier weight if we do kind of weight, you know, it doesn't even have to be weight, it just kind of get resistant bands, or just kind of, you know, do resistance stuff, and do a mixture of cardio and weight, and also doing it to suit you. Like, if you are really, really stressed out and really, really busy, you shouldn't be kind of doing really, really intense trainings because you're just stressing your body. Maybe you should be doing more like yoga and Pilates, or
balance
something.
It out,
getting that balance.
I have a new workout regimen that helps with that muscle maintenance. It is which, if people want to get, they're amazing, and they're not that expensive, but it's one of those vibration plates. Have you, you know, you stand on them, and they say, like, so you stand on this vibration plate, and it has different speeds, and you, like, your whole body is jiggling. But I'll stand on there, and I'll do arm weights, and I'll do squats, and it contracts the muscle like 90 times what it would normally do if you're just standing statically. And it's fun. Like, I feel like I do it in the morning, and it like wakes my whole body up. And it's good for activating digestive health. It's good for blood circulation. It's good for cellulite, because like everything's moving and there's no impact. So as you get older, you're not having, like, you're not running, you're not doing harsh movements. That's going to have a lot of impact on your joints. And it's novel. Like, it feels like it feels different. Or I've always jumped on a trampoline. And so looking at these different ways, but like standing on the vibration plate and doing arm weights or squats, like my muscles are exhausted, and it's 15 minutes. And you're not recommended to do it much more than that, because it's actually working your muscles. It's working your muscles at a faster pace. So they're getting more contractions in a shorter period of time. So like, I recommend that. That's been super fun. Oh my gosh, Ruth, this has been so full of really, I took so many notes, and this is going to go in the show notes. But I think this is just, it's simple and yet complex information, because I think many women don't truly understand their bodies, and they're looking at all these external factors versus internal. And, you know, what can I do to do my best to control my long-term health versus what pill can I pop? And I'm not opposed to the pills either, but I think it's a balance, right? It's a holistic approach But unless we understand our own individual bodies, we're not going to be the same as our girlfriends. So we've got to listen to our bodies, not just listen to what our girlfriends are going through, or even our moms who had a very different experience in their time period than we do now, 30, 40 years later.
Yeah.
Ruth, this has been fantastic. We will have any links to your information in the show notes if people just want to contact you and get to know more information. But really, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on.
All of the knowledge. This has been really wonderful. And I hope for all of our female listeners that I'm sure they learned so much. And there's never enough knowledge. And yet it's all kind of simple, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it comes down to the basics, get the basics right. And you are already going a long way to sort of improving your health.
Beautiful. All right. Yeah. Well, I hope you and your family continue to heal and stay healthy after your COVID experience.
Thank you.
And I look forward to being in touch. Thanks everyone for listening. And I hope you all take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.